now a well-known suburb. And then he tells another story about, you see, I was reading it in a colour supplement, a literary supplement, about Times the other day in England, that an American professor of literature was propounding a theory that the works of Shakespeare weren't written by Shakespeare at all. They were written, well, we've all heard that one before, you know. But this fellow said that they had been written by Edward de Vere, the great Earl of Oxford, who, according to this literary scholar, had said that Edward de Vere had sat in his study in Oxford for 35 years. And at the end of it ran out saying something to the effect, you read here, I've written the works of William Shakespeare or something. But anyway, that's how he's supposed to have done it these 35 years. Now, John Aubrey, this character I played, tells a story which might have saved this fellow an awful lot of research. Because it's a story about Edward de Vere and Queen Elizabeth, which suggests that perhaps he didn't sit in his study for 35 years. The story is simply, Edward de Vere, the great Earl of Oxford, in making his low obeisance to Queen Elizabeth, happened to let a fart. Whereupon he was so ashamed and abashed, he went to travel for 7 years. At his return, the Queen welcomed him home and said, "Oh, my lord, we have forgot the fart." But it does suggest that if that was so, and I'm sure the story is correct, it's hardly likely he sat in his study for 35 years if he spent 7 getting away from such an indiscretion. Well, it's not done with a question, is it? I got the whole idea.
Right here is, yes, lady bluer, right?
Yeah.
Chain, necklace, right?
Do you feel that you will be typecast playing the part of father for other parts? Do you think that...
Do you think you'll be typecast? That you only get hired for father part?
I think that's extremely unlikely. What I enjoy most of all about fathers, I'm playing it off my own persona without makeup, you know, it's just a white in the hair. And that's wonderful for me because over the years I have played a multitude of character parts. So much so that I feel that through sheer dint of hard work, I've driven myself into total obscurity. I've played everything. You know, even in America, I did one-man shows on Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill, both of which were quite big makeup jobs. And this John Aubrey character I mentioned had a 3.5-hour makeup job. So I've always been a heavy character actor. In fact, so much so that about 3 or 4 Christmases ago, in our English version of your television guide, there was a quiz on the back page. And I had just picked up the Actor of the Year award on television in England. Definitely in America, but in England. And they had a quiz on the back page where they had about 20 photographs of famous television personalities. And you had to kind of guess who they were. Well, I recognized photograph A as being Benny Hill. Because although he was wearing a big false nose and moustache and glasses and a wig and all the rest of it, I recognized his chin and lips as being Benny Hill. Now, photograph J was a totally straight photograph of me, and that was the one that no one got. So it always has been a question of stand up the real Roy Dotrice. And I'm very thankful for this opportunity. I adore playing father, and I adore not having to do all that maquillage, that makeup before I get in front of the cameras. It's wonderful for me. And I don't think that I will be typecast. I mean, you haven't, thank God, any of you seen the Corsican Brothers, have you? Well, that is exactly the character of father, which is Cheech and Chong's Corsican Brothers. Also, I've just done, I cannot know why, they seem to think that the English accent on American television is a terribly sinister accent. Just, I suppose, in England, we think that that accent, that drawl from the deep south, is also equally sinister. But I guess when I get cast in a lot of villains, I just played the villain in a piece which I think goes out in September with Donald Mills. It's a television film for CBS, which was called The Lady Forgets. That was totally different from Father. And I also played a kind of Dracula character with Meg Tilly and Ronnie McDowell in a piece which also goes out on September the 14th, I think, called Camilla. So I haven't been typecast yet, and I don't think I will. Way back.
What you want to say for like poetry and like that to do with Ron Perlman?
Do you have input in Ron Perlman's presentation of poetry?
I'm talking about when they do it together, like when they do plays and scenes.
When Father and Vincent do scenes. Do you have any input in what's gone back and forth, when it doesn't pertain to the plot, right?
Yeah, is it just the writers or do they get mentioned?
No, unless I don't. Unfortunately, the one has never consulted about that. I mean, it's put in the script and we have to do it. The only time I am of any use is sometimes if we have someone in who has to do a piece of Shakespeare is being taught by Vincent or Kathy or someone or myself even to do Shakespeare, and if they have to recite Shakespeare and they do it very badly, then I sometimes help them with the scansion and the meter and the stress and so on, you know, but the actual, my input as to what is chosen, that does not exist, alas. You see, there is a terrible thing, isn't there? I mean, it's because people are forced to do it at school, I suppose, and everybody thinks that Shakespeare is terribly dull and academic and stale and archaic and all those things, and it's not. I mean, if you like, I'll give you an example of something that's... Well, I once played Cassius in Julius Caesar, and Cassius is trying to persuade Brutus to become one of the conspirators. And Brutus says, you know, he values honor more than anything else in his life, and Caesar has always been a great friend to him. And Cassius recognizes this, and he says to Brutus, he says, I know that virtue in you, Brutus, as well as I do know your outward favor. Well, honor is the subject of my story. I cannot tell what you or other men think of this life. But for my single self, I had as lieve not be, as live to be in awe of such a thing as I myself. I was born free as Caesar, so are you. We both have fed as well, and we can both endure the winter's cold as well as he for once. Upon a raw and gusty day, the troubled Tiber, chafing with her shores, Caesar said to me, "Dearest Cassius, now leap in with me into this angry flood and swim to yonder point." Upon the word, accoutred as I was, I plunged in and bade him follow. So indeed he did. The torrent roared, and we did buffet it with lusty sinews, throwing it aside and stemming it with hearts of controversy. But ere we could arrive, the point proposed, Caesar cried, "Help me, Cassius, or I sink." I, as Aeneas, our great ancestor, did from the flames of Troy upon his shoulder the old Anchises bear, so from the troubled Tiber did I, the tired Caesar. And this man has now become a god. And Cassius is a wretched creature and must bend his body as Caesar carelessly, but none of it. He had a fever when he was in Spain. And when the fit was on him, I thought how he did shake. 'Tis true, this god did shake. His coward lips did from their colour fly, and that same eye of his whose awe doth bend the world, did lose his lustre. I did hear him groan, "Give me some drink, Titinius." As a sick girl, he doth amaze me. A man of so feeble a temper should so get the start of the majestic world and bear the palm alone? Well, that's a bit of Shakespeare, I think. Mind off the women. And the other one said, "Yeah." He said, "Well," he said, "I think it's beginning to work." My age now. I was 66 on the 26th. I don't want to become old, and none of us want to become old, you know, and I hope that when I do, I can enter into old age with some kind of dignity. But I was coming back from Palm Springs recently with my wife, and we went into a restaurant called Griswold's or something, and we had a meal there, and it was one of those places where they bring you a glass of wine, you can eat it and all the rest of it, but otherwise it's all self-service from the salad bar. And then they give you a check and you pay on the way out. When we got to the desk, this woman said to me, "Are there any senior citizens in your party?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, if you have any senior citizens, you'll get a 20% discount." So I said, "Are you suggesting that my wife and I are senior citizens?" "No, but you'll get a discount." I said, "Certainly not." I was 66. Vanity.
Right there.
Will you and Edward Woodward ever have a chance to work together?
Will you and Edward Woodward ever have a chance to work together?
We did quite recently, in an episode of The Equalizer. It was last Christmas. They offered, I was doing my usual half day on Beauty and the Beast. Said he somewhat busily. And Edward phoned me and said, "Are you busy this week?" And he said, "There's a wonderful part for you in The Equalizer. So we're doing a courtroom scene and we'd like you to play the prosecuting counsel. Control was on trial for treason or not." And so I went up there and did it and enjoyed it very much. Now, when Edward's series was cancelled recently, he was somewhat distraught because they had sort of almost promised him a 5th season. And he'd just taken a year's lease on a very expensive apartment in New York. He just enrolled my granddaughter, his daughter, in a very expensive school in New York and paid the fees. And he just bought a house just outside New York. And there he was with no opportunity of working in New York again. And so he phoned me up and he said, "You know, why don't we do a series together?" So I said, "I love that." So we then, I remember that many years ago, I'd been approached by a man called Wolf Mankiewicz, who wanted to write a series for me based on confidence tricksters. And it was about this chap who goes to prison. It's a fairly benign crime, but it's not a violent crime. And whilst he's in prison, he decides to make the acquaintance of every confidence trickster he can find. And he makes a compendium during his stay there of all the best confidence tricks that have ever been perpetrated. And when he comes out, he practices a different one every week. So it was a question of being a master of disguise, being a totally different person, totally different voice every week. And I would have enjoyed that. And then I saw that film, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is a wonderful film with Michael Caine and Steve Martin. And I thought, well, there's a possibility here for Edward and I to do a similar television series. So I wrote to Wolf Mankiewicz, and he is in the process of writing it, and Warner Brothers are very interested.
Back there.
Comments on Space 1999?
What's Space 1999? What about Space 1999?
He was in it a little bit.
You were in Space 1999?
I think I was. Yeah, that's when television was gas operated. Yes, I was in it for a couple of episodes. That was done by Sylvia and Jerry somewhere on. Yeah, it was a good series, wasn't it? Some of it was awfully good. I wish they'd do more of them. You know, how do you all like the new series of Star Trek? An old pal of mine that I work with, the Royal Shakespeare Company, Patrick Stewart, is in there. Do you know what is remarkable? It all gets back to the Star Trek thing. I was doing a convention, I haven't done many, I think it was my 3rd, but I was doing one with the chap who, what's his name, George, the little guy, George Decay. And I said to him, what was it? It wasn't Decay, was it? No. Sure. Oh, it was, no. Anyway, I was doing this panel with him, and I turned on him and I said, you know, because we had something like 5,000 Star Trek fans there. And I said, this is so immensely popular. I said, you must have done an awful lot of series. You must have done about 12 or 13 series. He said, no. He said, we did 2 and they cancelled. And then the fans kicked up such a furore that they decided to do another season. He said, and this has all happened to the fans. This way of why we are alive today. And I suddenly realized that we were almost in the same situation with Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, exactly.
We had such a wonderful quality. And we have something very definite to cling on to. I keep emphasizing this, but I do feel that all the people who worked on Beauty and the Beast, and this was made very evident to me when we came back after the hiatus, because they were all there, all the same people. They had been offered series of 22 episodes, and they had been offered Beauty and the Beast with only 12 episodes. But they all came back to Beauty and the Beast because they liked it so much. Very much a family, and I hope that you feel that you are very much part of that family.
Yeah.
And that is something for people to believe in these days. And I hope it long continues. I've got a poem here, which I'd like to read you. It's written by Betty Neiswender, who is organizing the Tunnel Convention in Las Vegas next year. And it promises to be the most wonderful convention because they're having a banquet, and it's in a very glamorous city, as you well know. So I advise you, those people that want to go, to book your tickets as soon as possible. Now, Betty has written a little parody of Shakespeare, which I'd like to read you, and with Betty's permission, because we've talked so much about the family, I want to change just the last line. We're in disgrace with CBS's eye. We, not alone, beweep our cancelled state and trouble deaf network with our outraged cry. And look on mindless shows, we curse our fate, wishing we had but one small shred of hope. Ratings unfair with many fans possessed. We have the highest art, the broader scope, but what we most desire, they value least. Yet in this state, the sponsors not despising, happily they'll bring it back. And then our state, like to the lark at break of day arising, sings kindle a master's praise at heaven's gate. For our sweet love restored, such joy gives. Then will our cry be, God be praised, the family lives.
Okay. I'd like to know how a handsome man as yourself feels next to playing next to a beast that is considered a sex symbol.
Yourself, you're playing next to a beast who is considered a sex symbol.
Well, the nice thing about playing with Ron and playing with the character of Vincent is that I feel I kind of have been in the past vaguely responsible for the way that Vincent has turned out as a person. And that's why I enjoy playing the character of father, because there's a great deal of father in me. I mean, I enjoy some of the nicer things in life, like good poetry and decent literature and music. And I hope I've instilled some of that into Vincent. What I didn't instill into him was the fact that he was going around to be a sex maniac. And that he was excited. I wonder if I can tell you this. No, I can't. Bear in mind that my wife Kay was a delightful lady, and Ron and I have been friends for a very long time. So this was said with a great deal of love. But Ron at one point, he couldn't understand, this was right at the beginning of the series. And he said to Kay one day on the set, he said, you realize that my manager has just told me that over 1 million women in this country want to sleep with me. So she said, well, that proves two things. He said, what's that, Kay? She said, well, all managers are bloody liars. And if you take your makeup off, they're going to run a mile. He chased her around the studio trying to strangle her. No one realizes that more than Ron, and Ron has got his feet firmly planted on the ground. I mean, he's the most wonderful man. And he has just told me, and this is news, that I think that his wife is having a baby. And that proves he is a sexy old beast. Living with the right people. Right there.
Someone came up to you with a piece of paper with just one question, or how would you answer it?
That proves he is a sexy old beast. only with the right people. Right there.
Someone came up to you with a piece of paper with just one question on it. How would you answer it? The question is, who is father?
Who is father?
Who is father? What is he? Oh gosh, that's difficult. I think father is obviously terribly disillusioned about the world above because he had a pretty raw deal up there. And he is, maybe he's a bit of a coward in many ways that he doesn't face the world above, but on the other hand, I think that the decisions he has to make on behalf of the Tamil people are done with total fairness, not always the way he wants them, and sometimes we have committee meetings where it's the majority vote that counts. I think he stands for fairness and for fair play, and most of all for love, for the family, and certainly in my case, I feel that the love for Vincent and for all the Tamil people is something which is predominant in my mind, and therefore all these kind of chats I have with Vincent about you mustn't go off the top, you shouldn't be seeing that girl and all that, it sounds a bit like a Jewish mother, I know. It really is done for the rest of the community, because if Vincent is ever discovered and they find out where he comes from, that's the end of that community, so he has to be protected. I have brought up, that's not true, my wife has brought up with a little assistance from me, 3 girls. And we brought them all well past the age of puberty now, and that's not easy in this world, with all the drugs and the nasty people floating around, to bring up little girls without anything nasty happening. This is my pride in life, that none of my children have had any nasty experiences. And I try to bring the same feeling into the family downstairs, the Tamil people. That's what father represents to me. Love. And some of the nicer things in life, as I mentioned before, to try and get people to be interested in literature and music. And what has amazed me most of all about this series, because when we did the pilot, we never thought it would go to series. We thought it was a wonderful pilot, we thought that's it. It's a great one-off, they'll never dare to attempt a series with this. But the great thing is there don't appear to be any parameters. I mean, we take off in all kinds of directions. And we dealt with some fairly relevant subjects along the way, whether it's child abuse or old people being turned out of their homes by unscrupulous landlords, or prostitution or drugs or whatever. We've dealt with all these things, and therefore the family, although it's fantasy to a certain extent, is becoming very real to us and to a lot of other people. So much so that when I was at a convention in Denver, there were a group of 5 girls from New York, and they said to me, one of them said, I'm going to sound so foolish, but I have to tell you this, that when I go along the streets of the pavements, walk the pavements of New York, and I see those grills leading down the subway, she said, if there's no one around, I invariably shout down there, are you all right, Father? And I have 4 people that said, you know, we do precisely the same. So we are, I suppose, getting a kind of reality to it, because the fact exists that there are over 300 miles of tunnels under the subways in New York, most of them built around about 1850. And a lot of homeless people do live down there. And I was delighted to see that Howard was up here yesterday auctioning bits and pieces, which you people so generously bought and gave far more than they were worth for. But they're going to a very deserving cause, because they are going to the homeless people of Santa Monica, the people that have to sleep on the beaches. And it's... I don't know what the question was originally. I quite forgot.
In the front row. Father to win a game of chess.
None of it's left to me, because I got played chess. And they didn't have to show me. No, I mean, it started off in a strange kind of way, because in the first 2 episodes, I was supposed to be a brilliant chess player. And it started with George Martin, and it's progressed downwards ever since. My father is an absolute fool at chess, even the children beat him. I know, because what I think is sometimes lacking in this show, and I wish there was much more of it, is humor. You can get your messages across just as well if you can make people smile than you can being serious. And I would like to introduce, but whenever I try to, it's invariably cut in the editing. But maybe eventually they will latch on, and if you'll vote like him, say, let's have more humour. I mean, after all, we are working for Whit Thomas. Girls and Benson and Sophia.
In the middle.
You've told us a little bit about Ron and how it is to work with Ron. Can you tell us a little bit about how it is to work with Linda?
How is it to work with Linda Hamilton?
It's splendid. I mean, she's a very professional lady. Extremely professional. She doesn't mess around. I mean, everything has to be right for Linda, and that includes the words. She will often summon the writers and say, this is not what the character would say, I don't want to say this, I'm going to say that. And invariably she's right. She's a very thinking actress. Instinctive, yes, but also quite academic in her approach to acting. And I don't know, there's tremendous depth to acting, and when you're acting with her, you can't fool around, you can't. With Ron, I mean, he and I kid all the time on the set, but with Linda, you're down to the serious business of the scene, you know. And I think that shows. I mean, I think her eyes blaze with sincerity, and it shows in her performance that she regards it as something very worthwhile, and she tackles it with the utmost sincerity. It's not as relaxed as working with Ron, I'll tell you that. But on the other hand, the end result is very professional, and she can be extremely helpful. You know, helping you with your own characters, she often has, and makes suggestions. Ron is a totally different kettle of fish. Ron is a master of voices, and is always doing funny voices and impersonations and gagging around. And that's fun. I mentioned the incident yesterday where, right at the beginning of the series, when his makeup was in a bit of a state of flux, and the teeth he was having trouble with. And he kissed me on the forehead. And when he came away, the crew exploded with laughter. And I found out that these two fangs had been embedded in my voice. So we do kid around a lot. And the other day, they brought a birthday cake onto the set, and they all, with my name written on it, Happy Birthday Roy, and about 163 candles on it. And they all sang Happy Birthday to me. I thought, idiots, it's not my birthday, but they obviously think it is. So I thought, well, I better go along with this. I can't do that. They've got all this cake, it's got all this blood, and there were drinks flowing on it. So I made this awful speech, thanking them all, and how nice it was they remembered my birthday. And they said, you bloody sycophant, we know it's not your birthday. Just to see what my reaction would be.
On the end there. White jacket.
You're a very talented man. Really enjoy your work on the show. I can't be a fan of the movie Mary Poppins with your daughter. And we just recently found out that was your daughter. Little girl. And now we know where she gets her good looks from.
Now we know where Mary Poppins' daughter gets her good looks from. I like that character.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Can I come and live with you all? Karen did a number of films for Disney, yes, including Mary Poppins and Snowmobiles with Walter Brennan and Three Lives of Thomasina. In fact, there was a rerun of Mary Poppins at Christmas on British television. And it was strange to see little Karen standing there with her two front teeth missing. Because she was quite, in a lovely way, she was quite ugly, actually. What was it, 6 years ago? Was it more than 6 years ago? She was voted one of the 6 most beautiful women in Europe. So she's quite different. She's very tall. And she does not get that from me. She gets that from her mother.
Okay, in the back.
Was Linda surprised by the Emmy nomination as well as the rest of the cast? Or?
Was Linda surprised by the Emmy nomination?
I can't answer that, darling, simply because I haven't seen Linda since the Emmy nomination. I haven't seen any of them since the Emmy nomination. So I haven't seen Ron and I haven't seen Linda. I haven't seen anybody except Howard. So I don't know what the reaction is. I mean, we're delighted because it will probably help, to give us another lease of life. I mean, particularly, are we nominated for Best Show? Yeah. Oh, we are. Well, that's great. That's more important. Individual acting nominations. I mean, if we could get voted as Best Show, They wouldn't dare take us off. They really wouldn't.
No.
So we have to keep our fingers crossed.
On this side, right here. When they finish filming now, before they have birth of her baby.
Yes, she has. We filmed about. We filmed enough with Linda to cover at least 6 weeks, 6 episodes, and so that she can go away and have her baby in comfort. When she will come back, I don't know. I don't know when she's going to come back. I don't know what's going to happen. There were all kinds of rumors. You see, I submitted the storyline about what could happen in the series, and we talked about it yesterday. Well, for the newcomers. It was a storyline which I don't know for sure whether they bought it or not. It was very relevant. The last episode of the last series, you see Vincent vanishing into that black void by himself. And you hear these awful screams, and Kathy goes in after him. Well, what happens is that he impales himself on some barbed wire, and he neuters himself. And Kathy goes in and finds out what's happened, and immediately loses interest in Vincent. She is then comforted by Father and becomes
How do the major cast members react among yourselves when they find out about the cancellation?
Oh, well, I know what I did. I got down on my knees and said my prayers and thank you all very much indeed, because I knew it was entirely through you. I mean, I think within an hour of the announcement being made, CBS, all the telephone calls blocked, they had 290 telegrams or cables within an hour of the announcement coming out. I mean, the power that you have and the love you have for the show is quite overwhelming, and they realize that. And also it seems to me that the letters to the sponsors, I met a lady yesterday who said that, you know, the sponsors are very concerned if they say we're not going to watch the show and therefore we're not going to watch the advertisements for your products. It's the sponsors that seem to get more jittery than actually CBS. The reaction from us initially, you know, was terrible disappointment. We were merely told we had not been picked up for fall season. We had not been picked up. That was the end. It was all over. Finished. I was packing my cases to go back to England. And then about 2 days later, there was such an outcry from you that they changed their minds, and they came to me, and my agent said they have offered you a guaranteed 9 episodes. They're probably going to do 12, but they will only guarantee you 9. Well, contractually, if they picked up the series at all, they had to pay us for 22 episodes. And I said, well, I'm not going to settle that. If we're going to do 12, I want to be paid for 12. Particularly as that means that I'm foregoing 10, you know, the salary 10. So this haggling went on for a long time. And all this time, this tremendous mail and this tremendous input was coming from you all. And they then said, we're definitely going to do 12, and we will pay you for 12. So that was great, and they made a concession. They did say that they would give me a slightly better credit, that it would be Roy Dotrice as father, not just Roy Dotrice, because a lot of people thought that J. Ackerman was playing father, and I was playing J. Ackerman or something. Anyway, then after that, the next move was that I spoke to Ron Coslow, and he said the response is still enormous. When I spoke to Ron only last week, he said, do you realize? He said they're receiving hundreds of letters every day from all over America. And he said, and they are besieged by this. And he said that they're in a terrible state. They are now talking about the show going on at the end of October, beginning of November, instead of the end of January. He said, and I am totally convinced that if this deluge of mail continues from the fans, that they are going to announce in mid-November that we're picked up for the whole season. How grateful we are to you, enormously grateful, all of us, because we just love doing the show. It's not just the money, although that does help a bit to pay rent and so on. But no, it's just being part of this great family, and the love I feel from so many people is quite wonderful. And I know that Ron and Linda do the same thing, and we want it to continue as long as possible. We don't want to go off into another series where we've just, bang, bang, cups and robbers around the streets of New York or Miami or Chicago. We don't want that. We feel this is an original show which has ethics and standards and morals, and we want it to continue. Thank you.
Right there.
Who are these sponsors that we should be writing to?
Who are the sponsors that we should be writing to?
Yeah, Helpers Network. This lady, would you like to stand up so they can see who you are? She's not Helpers Network. Helpers Network down here. Could you stand up so they can approach you, and they will find out from you the list of sponsors they can write to. Because believe you me, that does seem to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, sure. And we'll be outside afterwards. All right, what we got? Right there.
Have you had any trouble out in public? Are you being easily recognized now on television?
Well, you still shop in the supermarket.
I go regularly to my tailors. It's called Pick and Save. Occasionally I'm recognized there. But I'm not. It's very strange. I mean, the slightest thing, maybe it's the clothes or whatever. But when one puts on ordinary clothes and goes up the street, people don't seem to recognize me too much. I mean, yeah, a lot of people do, and I love that because they come up and talk about the show. But by and large, one's not perceived in the streets. Not yet.
We'll work on
Ready
it.
for it. Right there.
I just wanted to say that I think one of my favorite parts of the show, aside from Vincent and Catherine, is the fact that Father and Vincent can show such a deep affection for each other.
Yeah.
They kiss for him, like you said, and they touch a lot, and I think in this day and age it's really nice that can be seen and not taken the wrong way.
Yes, I agree. I get a lot of letters about that, and I'm delighted that people have noticed that aspect. A lot of it comes, I say, because, Ron and I do like one another very much, and we find it very easy. There was a period that went round at the beginning of the series, which was told to me by Ron Cosgrove. And I've obviously dropped the whole idea, and I'm delighted of it. I'm delighted that they have dropped the idea. But it was a theory which Ron Cosgrove was propounding right at the beginning of the series. And this has long since been forgotten. Because I was a medical scientist. And apparently I had been experimenting with genes. And the result was this. And I had felt such guilt over this, I decided to raise the boy myself. I don't like that. I think they have now decided that they don't like it either. But because of this, I felt terribly guilty in my relationship with Vincent at the beginning. And this guilt may have been misconstrued as concern or compassion or love. But I found that when people like that, and the fact that we could embrace each other, that we could kiss each other on the cheek or whatever, show filial affection. And a lot of people write to me and say, my dad stopped kissing me when I was 9. And I'm 15 now, and I wish he still did.
Yeah.
And we have this awful institution in England where children are, particularly amongst the so-called upper classes, they are, when they're born, the parents nominate a nanny who literally brings them up. And all mother does is to kiss them rather perfunctorily on the cheek at night when they go to bed. And as soon as they get to any age at all, they're sent away to a preparatory school, and then on to a boarding school or university. And they come back for a couple of weeks each year, at Christmas and Easter and things like that. And, they call their father sir and stand to attention. And that's nothing. They're not behaving like human beings. I hate that, and I think that the more love that Vincent and I can show for each other and express it in overt terms of actual physical contact, which I'm sure cannot be misconstrued, people like it, and we certainly want to persevere with it. So thank you for your question.
Can you tell us a little bit about what a production day is like?
Last one. What is a production day like?
For me, it's invariably very simple. Having said that, there was a car coming to fetch me at 5:30 tomorrow morning. I have to be in makeup at 6:15, and on the set for a rehearsal at 6:30 in the morning. So it's a pretty tough day. Of course, and the one that bears the brunt of it more than anyone is Vincent. I mean, I don't know how that man has existed with the kind of schedule he's had. Because sometimes we have filmed, quite frequently, we filmed up to 11, 12 o'clock at night. There was one dreadful occasion, I remember, when we finished filming at 11:30. He took his makeup off, and because it has to be taken off fairly carefully, he had his makeup taken off by 12:30. He was home by 1 o'clock, and they had to start filming the following morning at 8:30.